Hello everybody, welcome back to the HLTCO YouTube channel. I'm back, it is the start of a new week and I thought today I would discuss Tottenham Hotspur, Daniel Levy, the anti-ENIC sentiment and the fact that if you zoom out and look at the overall trend when it comes to Spurs and the way that they are perceived, at least in the current landscape, whether it be by Sky Sports, by TNT or by any member of the sort of revolving door of talking heads. There is this disconnect, I think, between what Tottenham fans are feeling and thinking, the match going, living and dying by every single kick of a game Spurs fan that, really are the lifeblood of that football club, and the general media perception. Because a huge amount is being spoken at the moment about Ange Postecoglou, about whether they should be Ange in, whether they should be Ange out, whether or not he has the ability tactically to be able to ride out this current storm. And as much as that is important in terms of the current and immediate discussion around Spurs, I think there is a point to be made here about the general sense of frustration and anger towards Daniel Levy and ENIC from Tottenham's fan base. I think it doesn't really matter to most of them at this stage whether you are Ange in or Ange out, just like it didn't matter if you were Jose in or Jose out, Conte in or Conte out before that or after that. You look at the overall picture. And, obviously I do this pod twice a week with Flav Bateman, Football Between the Lines. He is a diehard Spurs fan. I speak to a lot of them. There are a lot of them that are, I follow on social media and I converse with and see their stuff each and every day. And I do think that the conversation at this stage concerning Daniel Levy has almost reached a point of media exhaustion. Very similar in certain senses, as far as I can see, to the way that Newcastle fans and their rallying against and their anger towards Mike Ashley was sort of explained away in the latter stages of his ownership of Newcastle United, because it became a dry and tired story for many within the mainstream media bubble. They used to look at it. Yes, they knew that Newcastle fans had had enough. They wanted an end to Mike Ashley's reign at St James's Park, but it didn't create headlines. It didn't have that buzz anymore because it had been done to death as far as the media generally were concerned. And I look towards Ange Postecoglou's impassioned defence of his squad following the full-time whistle at Villa Park yesterday evening. The fact that he quite understandably is battle weary, that they've had a number of injuries, that the players that he is selecting are playing every single minute and they are just unable to see the wood for the trees largely. And I understand completely why he felt compelled to do that. But if you look at the general tone from, say, Jamie Carragher in the immediate aftermath to Tottenham's defeat against Liverpool in the League Cup final second leg a few days back, there was this sort of dismissiveness, this, well, it's Spurs, what do you expect? It's a Spursy thing to do, they don't win big games. It was a sentiment which I pushed back against on social media, because as far as I'm concerned, you look at their pathway through to that semi-final. They beat Manchester City, they beat Manchester United, they went to the Etihad back in November and won 4-0 when no one expected them to. They are capable of winning big games, and I think that in itself is to take away a degree of analysis and nuance that should be there. But I think the overall point to make here, and I don't want to keep on banging this drum for too long on this video, but Spurs fans generally are quite rightly anti-Levy and anti-ENIC more than they are pro or against any single manager that has been there over the last 23 years. They have one trophy in 23 years under the guidance of this current ownership model. And when you look at the amount of money that is generated by them, when you look at the overall financial health of that football club, because of the multiple different income streams that they've cultivated over the years, and this is something you can give ENIC and Daniel Levy a huge amount of credit for, I think it does create a multi-layered conversation, and not one that can just be explained away with, well, Daniel Levy is very good with money, what do you expect? There was a recent episode of the Stick to Football podcast, which of course is fronted by Gary Neville. It features Jamie Carragher, it features Jill Scott, Ian Wright and Roy Keane. And you had a situation where Ian Wright, a bona fide Arsenal legend, was actually backing the Spurs fans in their general sense of frustration towards Daniel Levy because of the fact that they have not strived in the way that you would like to have seen financially to try and put the pieces around players like Harry Kane, for example, before he left for Bayern Munich, to have the possibility of going and winning things on a regular basis. It has always been done with one eye on the bottom line, with one eye towards generating more money, to getting more bums on seats, to selling more corporate income, to getting the NFL there, to getting Beyonce, to getting the F1 tracks, whatever you might call it, even the recent Squid Games experiments. It just feels very, very corporate. And that in itself is something which Roy Keane, himself a boyhood Spurs fan, might I add, he sort of, I wouldn't say he had this impassioned defence of Daniel Levy, but he certainly came back towards Ian Wright with that's how he wants to run the football club. But this is what I think is happening, is that you have a scenario where Daniel Levy's success in terms of finance and the generation of multiple income streams has taken away from a level of scrutiny and a level of empathy, really, with the Tottenham fan base as to what they see as a general slippage in the standards of what they can expect week on week and year on year in terms of pushing for trophies and trying to break through that glass ceiling, be a regular player in the top four and potentially push for titles. Because if you look at the finances available to them, if you look at the amount of money that Spurs have generated since they moved to their new stadium in particular, there is no reason why they wouldn't be able to be on a level footing with the likes of Chelsea, with the likes of Arsenal, with the likes of Liverpool in terms of income generation. And that in itself is something which I think they had every right, really, to be banging the drum incredibly loudly about. One of the biggest bugbears of mine, and it's something that I touched upon in the first video that I did when coming back to YouTube after 5 or so months away, was the lack of nuance and the lack of depth that was given to analysis of fans' grievances, of different tactical systems, of clubs in general and the landscape within them. And I think Spurs are a very interesting test case in this particular, guys, because if you look at the general trend of the opinion towards Spurs from fans outside that particular bubble, or just in general discussion when you are talking to not even necessarily football fans, but the way that they are perceived, it's something I've spoken about with Flav on Football Between the Lines. Even at Glastonbury, you will hear songs of Tottenham get battered everywhere they go, and these are people who aren't necessarily embedded within football culture, but that is the sort of punching bag existence that Spurs have now cultivated because of the years lacking success in terms of tangible trophy wins. And, I'm not necessarily saying that Daniel Levy has presided over this with the intention of not being successful, but there was a game at the start of December. I believe they lost it 1-0 to Bournemouth, away from home. The fans afterwards were extremely perturbed, shall we say. The players and the manager, Ange Postecoglou, came in for a hell of a lot of stick when they went over to clap and applaud those fans at full time. And I remember having a conversation with Flav on the podcast about the fact that fans, not just at Spurs, but in general, are sick and tired of being treated and taken for granted in the way that pure customers are by capitalist monoliths. You can look towards, and it was something I said on a previous video I've done in this subject a couple of years ago, at Coca-Cola as an example. A multinational, multi-billion-dollar brand, yes, and one that do rely heavily on the way they are perceived by their customers and by society generally, but they do not have the hopes and dreams of those customers in their palms every single week. And that in itself is where football as a business model and the rest of capitalist society completely shifts. You have to be in tune with a fan base, with what exactly they want. And it doesn't necessarily mean success. It just means a tangible sense of progress, of everyone pulling in the same direction, of there being a plan, of them being engaged with the supporter base, the legacy fans, as they are often described in modern football parlance, the people that are there come rain or shine. Away at Aston Villa yesterday on a Sunday, 5:30 kickoff, they're there supporting the team in the away end. They're the people who feel this most acutely week on week, and I think that is something that Daniel Levy has really struggled to grasp throughout his time as the head of the totem pole at Tottenham Hotspur. They have sky high ticket prices. I think the average price when I did this particular video a couple of years ago were hovering around the £1,000 mark for a season ticket. I'm not sure if that's gone up or down. I highly doubt that it's gone down in the intervening period. As I've already mentioned, you've got the NFL, you've got the concert venues, you've got the F1 track, you've got all of these different things that do generate income, yes, and do put Tottenham on an extremely secure financial footing. But what is it for if it's not for the pursuit of glory? In researching for this video, I stumbled across a tweet that was sent back in December of 2024. It referenced a newspaper article, which I will read out for you now, that spoke specifically about the media strategy, or at least the income strategy of ENIC and Daniel Levy when it came to their purchase of Tottenham Hotspur, and some of the quotes within it are alarming. Now, I haven't been able to fully source this, however I have no reason to believe that it has been made up by the poster. It sounds very much in line with the way that ENIC and Daniel Levy have gone about their business since taking over at Spurs. The key quote here, and there are a couple which I will, as I say, put up on the screen for you now. It said the strategy was to build an international sports and entertainment group to profit from the media's interest. The excitement was purely the gamble to earn millions. There is no passion here, said Levy, admitting that neither Lewis nor himself was particularly keen on football. This is purely financial. Football, he believed, was commercially underexploited, particularly in television and merchandising. We chose football, Levy explained, because it is the most popular sport on earth and the biggest money spinner. Now, I understand that from a business perspective. I think we all can. I think it's an obvious thing to say because football is the most popular sport on earth. You know, you look at the World Cup, you look at the popularity of different domestic leagues, you look at the Champions League, the amount of eyeballs that you can attract, and it stands to reason that finance is going to go hand in hand with it. But if you have an ownership model who aren't Spurs fans from their very core, then you are going to end up in a situation where apathy becomes the watchword. And, you know, I've been told off, actually, for using the word apathy on a couple of occasions, because I think it does actually veer more towards general indignation and anger from many corners of the Spurs fan base. You know, you look at it and think, if you haven't got people at the very top that care about the glory of supporting this football club, what is the point? You know, as I've said on a previous video in relation to this particular subject, with Spurs, they exist in a strange area of English football because they are never going to be relegated from the Premier League. They simply have too much money, too much in the way of resource, the squad is too good. Even at the moment, you know, they find themselves below my side, Crystal Palace, but it is not going to be the long-term trend. They will still have more than enough in the tank to make sure they are not relegated to the second tier. Of course, they will not have the financial boom that is Champions League qualification to further line their pockets. But if you look at the different income streams, they will continue to be on a very sound financial footing. But that does leave you wondering what the point of everything is if you don't have an ownership model who are going to strive with every sinew of their being to try and create more in the way of memories for their supporters rather than just worrying about the bottom line of a balance sheet. I dare say there will be plenty of people watching this, or at least I hope there will be plenty of people watching this who aren't Tottenham fans. Potentially they support EFL clubs or other clubs within the Premier League, maybe some Crystal Palace fans given the following that I have on social media, who sit and scoff and say, you know, you don't know you're born, you don't know how lucky you are. And maybe they have a point in that sense. You know, you look at Tottenham, what they've achieved throughout the last 50 to 60 years, the regular European football, the quality of player, the financial stability they have. You know, there's no worry about them going to the wall in terms of administration or anything like that. But I do think that this is a far deeper issue than many in the mainstream media bubble will choose to accept. You know, there are all sorts of different gripes that Tottenham fans have with their board of directors. I think their ticket prices, as I say, have gone up around 6% for this season compared to last in terms of season ticket pricing. There has been the much criticised decision to scrap senior concessions. You've had a general sanitisation, shall we say, of the match day experience for their supporters. There was an attempt, I think it was called Return of the Shelf, to get the fans who wanted to be vocal and back the team as much as possible to sit together in the stadium, to be able to create something of a wall of noise, to make sure that the players are backed vocally from week to week. But they have been very open about the fact on social media that they've received very little in the way of tangible support from the football club throughout this process, even going as far to say they have actually been of detriment to their attempts to try and get the atmosphere boosted. I think when the stadium was first built, this suggestion that the stand that was a single tier would create a wall of noise and be really, really, you know, an intimidating and very much a useful thing for Spurs to have in the round has been debunked somewhat. I think I spoke to Flav about this, and he said that it was needed in relation to be able to move the pitch away and enable the NFL playing surface to be moved into its place for that multi-purpose use. So even then, you can look at it as something of a Trojan horse. There are other factors as well. The decision to throw their hat in with the European Super League, albeit it didn't last very long, of course, but there were plenty of people laughing at the mere attempt of Spurs to be grouped in with the likes of Arsenal, Manchester United, Liverpool, etc. But the fact that Daniel Levy and ENIC were so open in their desire and their ambition to be part of that really did fly in the face of everything that Spurs fans hold dear when it comes to their club's history, the illustrious nature of their past, and what they want to represent within the English football landscape. There was the scuppered attempt to move them to Stratford before, of course, West Ham took ownership of the London Stadium. These are just scratching the surface, really, in terms of the number of problems that Spurs fans have had with their ownership in recent times. And when you put it all together, when you look at the overall situation, you realise just how much of a mess it has become. Because financially, Tottenham are so profitable that you will struggle to get the likes of Daniel Levy and ENIC to even be open to the idea of selling. And that in itself is something that will sit deeply in the minds of every single Tottenham fan and leave them to wonder what exactly they can do. The reason primarily for me recording this today is that they have a protest that is scheduled for the 16th of February, their home game against Manchester United. It's a 4:30 kickoff this Sunday. The protest itself comes under the guise of a social media account called Change for Tottenham. There are a lot of very influential people on social media that have lent their backing to it. One particular guy, Billy, who I speak to pretty frequently, has a very sizable and dedicated Twitter following, and he is fully on board with it. And even if it doesn't move the needle immediately, it does at least show that there is a tangible sense of genuine frustration within Spurs fan base now when it comes to Daniel Levy. And I think, you look at it, it's how I started this video today, it's how I would like to end it. Sometimes social media can be a bit of an echo chamber. Sometimes it can remove itself from reality. But I do think that the general tone of coverage around Tottenham Hotspur over the last 6 to 12 months has veered into cliche, into sort of easy, low-hanging fruit comment, rather than looking at the overall situation that Spurs fans are so frustrated by, which is the continued presence of Daniel Levy and ENIC at the very top of that club, and the fact they do not feel that those particular individuals have the best interests of the club's long-term values at heart. And that is something that the likes of Jamie Carragher, Gary Neville, Roy Keane, the likes of TNT, BBC, they can aid Tottenham fans in that particular viewpoint. They don't have to just constantly make a joke of it, make light of it, try and back Daniel Levy up. If you actually listen to people, very clued up people that care deeply about their football club, there is a sense that they are banging their head against the figurative brick wall and are running into those easy stereotypes of Spursiness and Tottenham being battered everywhere they go. And obviously, I may well be someone who's veered more into sympathetic coverage of them because of my relationship with Flav now and the fact that I speak about Spurs more frequently than I did before, but it does feel to me like a very easy win for mainstream media to cover this particular issue with a bit more nuance and a bit more understanding of the deep-rooted issues that Tottenham fans have when it comes to their ownership model as things stand. Other than that, there isn't a great deal for me to add on this video today. Hopefully you've enjoyed it. If you have, please do consider giving the video a like, leaving me a comment, whether it be on social media or on the comment section underneath this particular video, and maybe even subscribe as well, because I am back now. This is my third video in just a matter of days, and I'm very much enjoying it, I have to say. I got a little bit of stage fright or imposter syndrome, I suppose you could say, but it really has been quite pleasant to come back to YouTube and see the content be received as well as it has. So yeah, thank you very much for that, and I will look forward to speaking to you again soon. Cheers.